Hull, obviously, a player for the Indiana Fever. And I would say the Rose, but she doesn't leave the bench anymore. She has been pushed to the end of the bench from a starting spot on the best team in Unrivaled to end of the bench on the worst team in Unrivaled. Like, it does, for me, I'm looking at it and I'm like, what is Nola Henry doing? Like, I understand, okay, yeah, you can't bench Kalia Copper, but like, it's so obvious. And anyone being like, oh,
What makes this situation especially hard to justify is the selective memory surrounding last season. Coach Nola Henry benefited greatly from circumstances that forced her into a lineup adjustment she might not have otherwise made. When Kelsey Copper went down with an injury, the team had no choice but to adapt. And while no one celebrates injuries, the reality is that the roster functioned far more effectively in her absence. The offense flowed better. The defense tightened. Roles became clearer. Chelsea Gray running the point alongside a true big and a high-effort defender like Lexie, Hull created balance. That lineup wasn't flashy, but it worked because it respected spacing, defensive responsibilities, and ball movement. Players knew where to be. Rotations made sense. There was actual basketball chemistry instead of theoretical fit. Hull thrived in that structure. She wasn't asked to be a primary scorer. She wasn't forced into uncomfortable offensive roles. Instead, she did what she does best: pressure the perimeter, disrupt passing lanes, and make life miserable for opposing guards. That contribution doesn't always show up in box scores, but it shows up in wins. Fast forward to now. Copper is back, and suddenly the lessons from last season have been completely ignored. Instead of reintegrating her in a way that preserves what worked, the coaching staff has chosen to reshuffle everything. The result? The player who once stabilized the defense is now glued to the bench, while opponents are torching the perimeter without resistance. The most baffling part came during a game where Marina Mabrey dropped 47 points. Nearly 50. That kind of scoring outburst should trigger immediate adjustments. You'd expect the coaching staff to lean on their best perimeter defender, to throw different looks, to at least make the scorer uncomfortable. Instead, Hull remained sidelined while Mabrey carved up the defense possession after possession. That decision alone raises serious questions. If your defensive specialist can't get minutes while an opposing guard is on pace for a career night, then what exactly is the criteria for playing time? Because it clearly isn't impact, matchup logic, or past success. This isn't about blaming Copper. It's about acknowledging that certain lineups simply don't work, regardless of talent. Basketball is about fit, not names. And right now, the coaching staff appears more concerned with forcing a vision than responding to reality. Hull's benching isn't accidental. It's a byproduct of a stubborn refusal to adjust.
Nola Henry did a bad job at Unrivaled last year, and then, in fairness, got very lucky that Kalia Copper went and got herself injured. Because I don't mean to wish injury on anybody, but this team functions so much better without Kalia Copper. And Lexie Hull has been now relegated to the end of the bench, while Marina Mabrey drops 47 on them. She has a near 50 piece on them. And everyone's just like, oh yeah, that happened.
To really understand how flawed these decisions are, you have to look at what actually happened during that game. Not the narrative, not the box score, but the flow of play. Marina Mabrey scored 20 points in the second half alone. 20 in one half. And during most of that stretch, Lexie Hull was sitting on the bench watching it unfold. Yes, when Hull was on the floor, Mabrey scored on her. That's not in dispute. Mabrey is an elite scorer, and she hit some extremely tough shots. She used pump fakes, manipulated help defenders, and occasionally caught Hull leaning just enough to create space. That happens. Even the best defenders get scored on. But here's the key difference that everyone seems determined to ignore. Those baskets were contested. Mabrey had to work for them. She wasn't walking into open jumpers or uncontested drives. She was hitting fadeaways, off-balance shots, and difficult attempts that require elite shot-making. That matters. Defense isn't about eliminating scoring entirely. It's about increasing difficulty. When Hull was defending, Mabrey had to be great. The moment Hull went to the bench, the difficulty level dropped dramatically. The floor opened up. Rotations broke down. What had been contested possessions turned into clean looks and straight-line drives. That's not coincidence. That's cause and effect. Elite defense often looks bad on paper because it doesn't always result in stops. But it changes behavior. It forces scorers to hesitate, to rush, to take lower percentage shots. When that pressure disappears, offenses settle into rhythm, and that's exactly what happened. The decision to keep Hull out while Mabrey caught fire wasn't just questionable, it was negligent. It showed a misunderstanding of defensive value and an over-reliance on surface-level outcomes. Hull didn't fail because Mabry scored. She succeeded because Mabry had to earn every point. Once Hull sat, the game turned into a layup line.
He goes and drops 47. And what's people's reactions? Oh, okay. Not, what are we doing? Not, should we put our best defender? And by the way, Marina Mabry was cooking Lexie Hull. But at least when Lexie Hull was on, it was the unbelievable, crazy shit that she was putting up and going in. And in fairness, Lexie Hull did jump on some of those fakes that Marina Mabry was throwing, but I don't really care. I don't really care. Like, she had a 20 points.
If you want the clearest evidence of how broken the evaluation process has become, consider this. Kate Martin is getting more minutes for the Mist than Lexie Hull is getting for Rose. That statement alone should stop any serious basketball conversation in its tracks. No disrespect to Martin's WNBA career. She has value in a traditional setting. But in Unrivaled, she has struggled badly. Outside of Rachel Banham, she has arguably been the least effective player in the league so far. She hasn't impacted games on either end. The numbers reflect it. The film reflects it. And yet, she continues to see the floor. Meanwhile, Alyssa Thomas goes down with an injury, thinning an already shallow talent pool. Logic would suggest that defensive specialists and high-effort players would become even more valuable. Instead, Hull still can't crack the rotation. That tells you everything. It shows that coaching staffs are not evaluating based on contribution, matchup value, or situational need. They're reacting to perception, off-season narratives, and experimental formats. And until that changes, players like Lexie Hull will continue to be misused, not because they lack ability, but because the system has lost its compass.
Literally, like, their lineup works 100 times better when it is Chelsea Gray, a big, and a hustle player. It's as simple as that. Last year, it was Chelsea Gray, Angel Reese, and Sykes a lot of the time. This year, it's been Lexie Hull. It does not work with Kalia Copper, Chelsea Gray, and a big. That line does not work. And to be fair, like, at times they ran double bigs last year with Azare and Angel Reese. But lads, we are now sitting here watching game after game after game where Lexie...
Pay close attention to that frustration, because it tells a much bigger story than a bad night or a single coaching decision. What we're seeing unfold isn't just a player struggling to find minutes. It's the unraveling of logic and how certain teams are evaluating talent right now. This is a player who went from being a legitimate starter on the best roster in the league to becoming an afterthought on what is clearly the weakest team in the unrivaled setup. That kind of drop-off doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't happen without consequences. The question that nobody seems willing to ask out loud is straightforward. What exactly is Coach Nola Henry trying to accomplish? Because whatever the plan is, it's not translating to wins, cohesion, or accountability. This situation goes far beyond one athlete being benched. It reflects a deeper systemic issue with how WNBA coaching staffs are allowing a short, experimental off-season league to influence real professional decisions. Unrivaled is a 3-on-3 format. It is fast, chaotic, spacing-heavy, and often rewards players who thrive in open-court improvisation rather than structured 5-on-5 basketball principles. Defense in that setting is fundamentally different. Rotations are simplified, help defense is limited, and physicality is muted. Using that environment as a serious measuring stick for who deserves minutes in the WNBA is not just flawed, it's borderline irresponsible. And yet, that's exactly what appears to be happening. Lexie Hull is paying the price for it. Hull's value has never been flashy scoring or highlight reels. Her worth has always been rooted in defensive intensity, effort plays, positioning, and the ability to disrupt opposing guards. Those are traits that matter far more in a structured 5-on-5 system than in a loose 3-on-3 league where offense dominates by design. When coaches ignore that distinction, players like Hull get mislabeled as ineffective simply because their strengths don't translate cleanly to an exhibition-style format. What makes this even more troubling is the context. The team Hull once started for didn't suddenly forget how basketball works. She didn't forget how to defend. She didn't lose her instincts or discipline. The only thing that changed was the lens through which she was evaluated. Instead of film lineup efficiency and matchup impact, decisions are being shaped by a league that has almost no correlation to the demands of the WNBA season. This isn't just unfair to Hull, it's dangerous for roster integrity. When coaches prioritize off-season optics over in-season fundamentals, they distort player roles and sabotage chemistry. The benching becomes symbolic. It sends a message that defensive reliability, adaptability, and effort matter less than how entertaining you look in a condensed format designed for fans, not for development. So no, this isn't about one player losing minutes. It's about a coaching philosophy that's drifting away from basketball reality. And until that disconnect is addressed, situations like Lexie hulls won't be rare. They'll become the norm.
Kate Martin's even playing more minutes for the Breeze at the minute than Lexie's playing for her team. And no offense to Kate Martin, Kate Martin's been absolutely terrible. She's been she's been outside of the worst player in Arrival by 100 miles has been Rachel Bannum. Outside of Rachel Bannum, Kate Martin might be the worst player. Might have been the worst player so far. At the same time, the likes of Dane Evans and stuff are injured. And actually, no. There's some players that haven't been great.
Statistics like plus-minus can be misleading, but lineup data tells a clearer story. And that story directly contradicts the current rotation choices. Last season, the Mist's most effective units were built around balance and simplicity. Chelsea Gray orchestrated the offense. Angel Reese and Michaela Onyenwere rotated in the front court. A hustle-oriented defender filled the gaps. It wasn't complicated, but it worked. This season, that philosophy has been abandoned. The coaching staff is forcing a Chelsea Gray-Kelsey Copper backcourt alongside a big, despite overwhelming evidence that the spacing collapses. The floor shrinks. Driving lanes disappear. Defensive assignments become messy. Film confirms it. Results confirm it. The eye test confirms it. What's wild is that even double big lineups last year, featuring players like Azra Stevens and Reese, functioned better than this current setup. That alone should trigger reevaluation. If unconventional lineups worked better than what's being forced now, then the issue isn't availability. It's stubbornness. Roster construction is about synergy, not star stacking. Right now, the Mist are prioritizing names over roles. And when that happens, players like Hull, who thrive in defined, effort-based roles, get squeezed out. This isn't a talent issue. It's a philosophical one.